Welcome to the realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Enjoy listening. Nathan Starks had just finished his shift. With a sense of relief and anticipation, he made his way back home. His first week in space had come to an end today, and he was adjusting faster than he had expected. Nathan was a highly skilled doctor, and his excellence had not gone unnoticed by the authorities of the space colony. They had transferred him from Earth, offering a generous salary. Within a week, he had already built a solid network, earning the trust of both humans and extraterrestrials alike. Being human gave him a sense of confidence, making it easier for him to communicate with alien men and women without hesitation. As he walked home, his phone rang. He answered immediately. "Dr. Nathan, I hope I'm not disturbing you. I'm Vic, the woman you treated yesterday. My friend is suffering from the same issue. I know your shift is over, but could you help her at your place?" Nathan paused for a few seconds before responding. Yes, Vic. I don't usually take patients at home, but just this once, I suppose I can make an exception. I'll be available in about an hour." After their conversation ended, Nathan picked up his pace. He believed that making such gestures would help him establish himself in the colony. Accepting patients at home wasn't common for him, but it was a necessary move. When he arrived at his apartment, he quickly glanced around. His home was usually tidy, but tonight was different. He was about to receive a special visitor. "Stay professional, Nathan," he muttered to himself, but deep inside, he felt a small spark of excitement. He straightened the cushions on the couch, put away a few stray items, and went to the kitchen to pour 2 glasses of water. Taking a deep breath, he finally sat down on the couch. Just then, the doorbell rang. She was here sooner than expected. He smirked slightly as he walked toward the door and opened it. Standing in front of him was Vic's friend, Flux. Her skin had a faint greenish hue, her long dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore an elegant white dress, and her dangling earrings sparkled under the light. She slightly tilted her head in greeting. "Dr. Nathan, I apologize for disturbing you at this hour, but Vic told me you could help." Nathan met her gaze. Her voice was soft, but there was something in her eyes, something beyond mere discomfort. He smiled faintly. "It's no trouble. Please come in. Where does it hurt?" Flux hesitated for a moment before placing a hand on her neck. "This area. I've been feeling discomfort all day." Nathan leaned in slightly, examining the area with care. Your muscles are a bit tense, but it's nothing serious. Honestly, you don't need medical intervention, but a massage might help." Flux nodded in agreement. Nathan placed his hands on her neck, gently kneading the tension away. Her skin was cooler than a human's, a detail he noted with quiet curiosity. "How long have you been living here?" Nathan asked while continuing his massage. "A year or so. It took some time to adjust to humans coming from Earth, but now I feel quite comfortable." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Adjust to humans? You don't strike me as someone who's shy around people." Flux smiled slightly but didn't answer. A quiet moment passed as he continued the massage. Then he stopped, withdrawing his hands as he met her gaze. "Flux, did you really come here because of the pain? Or was it just an excuse to see me?" Flux let out a soft chuckle. "Of course, I came because I was uncomfortable." Nathan tilted his head, giving her a knowing look. Flux finally sighed and, with a playful glint in her eyes, lowered her gaze slightly. "But maybe I didn't want to see you." Nathan leaned back on the couch, a grin tugging at his lips. "Now that makes more sense." Flux studied him, tilting her head ever so slightly. "So, doctor, what happens now?" Nathan narrowed his eyes as he gazed at her. "Maybe my shift is truly over now, don't you think?" Flux smiled subtly. "In that case, I suppose I'll stay a little longer." Nathan stood up and walked into his room. After disappearing for a few moments, he returned, now dressed in casual attire. "If my shift is over, then I don't need to keep my coat on, right?" he said teasingly. Flux raised an eyebrow before playfully moving her hands as if to remove her own dress. Before she could continue, Nathan reached out and gently stopped her hand. He then leaned in and placed a soft kiss on her lips. "It's too soon for that," he whispered. Flux closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling his lips before he pulled away. When she looked at him again, he was smiling. His words were gentle yet firm, setting a clear boundary. She studied him for a moment, sensing the curiosity in his eyes. This man was different from others. Flux exhaled, tilting her head slightly. "I want to stay the night." Nathan hesitated for a brief second before nodding. Inside, he felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in a long time. Out here in the vast emptiness of space, far from Earth, Flux suddenly felt like home. As the night stretched on, they eventually made their way to Nathan's bedroom. It was simple, but comfortable. Flux lay down first, and Nathan slowly settled beside her. For a while, they just lay there, looking at each other. Nathan realized how peaceful he felt. Flux's presence was like an anchor, grounding his restless soul. He turned toward her, burying his face in her hair and taking a deep breath. She was almost like an angel, silent yet all-encompassing. In the vastness of space, where loneliness was inescapable, Nathan felt whole for the first time in years. When Nathan woke up the next morning, Flux was not in bed. He got up and wandered into the living room, following the scent coming from the kitchen. Flux was preparing breakfast. She had managed to create a simple but warm meal using the limited supplies available in the colony. Nathan watched her for a moment before smiling and sitting down at the table. Flux handed him a plate, and they shared a quiet meal together. Nathan sipped his coffee, while Flux casually asked how his day would be. He smiled slightly, talking about work. Flux only nodded in response, but there was something in her eyes, something deep, something meaningful. Days passed, and Flux continued to visit Nathan often. Sometimes just to talk, sometimes to cook for him. Their time together became natural. Nathan found himself looking forward to seeing her after work. The space colony was no longer just a workplace, it was starting to feel like home. And Flux was the reason for it. One evening, Flux stood in the corner of the kitchen, gazing at Nathan. Noticing her stare, Nathan turned to her with a small smile. She took a deep breath and walked over, placing a small box in front of him. Nathan, puzzled, opened it. Inside was a sleek metallic ring, minimalistic in design, yet elegant. Flux met his gaze. With a calm but open heart, she confessed her feelings. She told him how he made her feel, how, for the first time, she had found a sense of belonging. She asked him to stay. Nathan sat there, staring at the ring on his finger. He turned it slightly, watching how the metal reflected the soft glow of the kitchen lights. It felt cool against his skin, yet somehow the warmth of the moment made it feel as if it had been a part of him forever. Flux was watching him intently, her hands gently folded in front of her. Though her expression was calm, her eyes betrayed a hint of nervousness. For someone so composed, so sure of herself, this was the most vulnerable he had ever seen her. Nathan finally looked up and met her gaze. "You really thought this through, didn't you?" he asked, his voice quiet but full of meaning. Flux smiled slightly. "I don't do things halfway, Doctor." He chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, I figured that out already." A comfortable silence settled between them. Then Nathan reached out and took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Tell me something," he said. "What made you decide this? Why now?" Flux exhaled slowly, gathering her thoughts. "Because I realized something," she admitted. "Ever since I came to this colony, I thought I had adjusted. I thought I had built a life here. But I was wrong. I was just existing, Nathan. Not living. Not until you." Nathan swallowed, feeling the weight of her words settle deep in his chest. "You made me feel like I belonged," she continued. "Like I had someone to come back to. Someone who saw me, not as an alien, not as just another resident of this colony, but as me. And I don't want to lose that." Nathan gave her hand a squeeze. "You won't," he promised. Flux tilted her head slightly, studying him as if memorizing every detail of his face. "Then stay with me," she said again, softer this time. Nathan took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a brief moment. Then, when he opened them, he smiled. Yeah, he murmured. Yeah, I'll stay. Flux's lips parted slightly in surprise, as if she hadn't expected him to agree so easily. Then, after a heartbeat of stillness, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Nathan embraced her without hesitation, pulling her close. The scent of her hair, the coolness of her skin against his own, the steady rhythm of her breathing, it all felt so right. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just a doctor sent to another world. He wasn't just someone trying to make a name for himself in a colony far from Earth. He was home. Days turned into weeks, and their bond deepened with every passing moment. Flux became a constant presence in his life, and Nathan found himself looking forward to every evening they spent together. They developed their own quiet routines, mornings where Flux would sit on the counter, watching Nathan make coffee, evenings spent curled up on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. And then there were the late nights. Nights where words weren't necessary, where the only sound was the soft hum of the colony outside and the steady, reassuring presence of each other. Nathan never thought he'd find something like this, not out here, not in the vast emptiness of space. But with Flux, everything felt natural. One evening, as they sat on the small balcony of his apartment, staring out at the stars, Flux spoke up. Have you ever thought about what's next? Nathan turned to her. What do you mean? I mean, we both know this colony isn't permanent, she said. People come and go. Missions change. But what about us? Nathan was silent for a moment. Then he reached over and took her hand. Wherever we go, he said, we go together. Flux blinked, then smiled. You're sure? Nathan smirked. I don't do things halfway either, Flux. She laughed softly, squeezing his hand. And just like that, in the endless vastness of space, two souls found something unbreakable. A home. A future. Each other.